Our final company in the energy space is called Ostrom Climate. Ostrom Climate is one of North America's leading providers of carbon management solutions. It's based in Vancouver, British Columbia. The team bridges the gap between commitment and action for individuals and organizations rising to the global challenge of climate change, which we all know is a major challenge in this environment. Hence, you'll see the ESG initiatives, the CSR initiatives. The company uses evidence-based strategies and an action-oriented approach to combat the twin crisis of environmental degradation and climate change. With us today is Tejinder Virk, who not only is the CEO of Ostrom Climate, but is also an advisor to ArcStone. Please welcome Tejinder Virk.
Good afternoon. Nice to be here. As Jack mentioned, my name is Tej Virk. I'm CEO of Ostrom Climate Solutions. I'm here to talk about our vision on sustainable impact, on creating the future of carbon management solutions, and also as a publicly traded company on the venture, talking about how we will create material shareholder value. In fact, being here today, and thank you to our hosts, ArcStone-Kingswood, this is the first time the company has been at an investor event like this in many years. And as they say, timing is everything. So I'm proud to be able to talk about the opportunity set and what we're doing. Just moving past Safe Harbor. We're based in Vancouver, listed on the venture, ticker COO.V, and if you haven't figured that out, that's the chemical symbol for carbon dioxide. We're a leading global carbon management company. We've worked with over 200 organizations. That includes many Fortune 500 companies. We've worked with many indigenous stakeholders within Canada, and we are leveraging those relationships to create impact, to create shareholder value, and we're also doing this in emerging markets. What does our company do? There's three pillars. The first is carbon project development. The second is climate management solutions, and the third, carbon trading. What is carbon project development? A carbon project is any activity which reduces, mitigates, or removes carbon dioxide or its equivalents from the atmosphere. That can be done through activities such as planting forests, protecting forests, changing agriculture practices to emit less carbon. Those would be called nature-based solutions. You can do it through technology. You can put up solar panels, windmills. That's another way to minimize carbon or reduce carbon footprints. Those projects generate carbon credits. Carbon credits are permits, which represent 1 ton of carbon dioxide or its equivalents. Those permits can be purchased by organizations to offset their footprints for carbon. This is very important as I talk about the market. We have businesses around that, Climate Solutions. It's effectively our professional services division that consults and helps to build these projects. And then we have carbon trading, where we take those carbon credits and we sell them into the market to those final carbon emitters. So think of big oil and gas companies, energy companies. We wrap this around a brand called Offsetters in the Offsetters community. This is a leading brand in Canada, where if you are one of our B2B clients, you can get a stamp. You can be climate friendly, climate positive. That comes with us doing work on your climate footprint. So that's our downstream business. We lead by technical expertise. That's across forest carbon, which you'll see in some of our past projects. We're innovating in climate-smart agriculture, so rice cultivation. And there are a few other technical areas which we lead in. Our mission statement is stated pretty clearly. We want to be a global carbon leader. And we want to develop high-quality carbon projects which result in long-term recurring revenues related to carbon credit sales. And this is selling into a market where we see tremendous growth around carbon demand because of net zero commitments. You probably heard this term, net zero, many, many places. Our team is well positioned to tackle this opportunity. So on this slide, you're going to see that we have a number of specialists with technical expertise in carbon. Our chief operating officer, our international director, our domestic director. Between them, each of them have 15 to 20 years of carbon management expertise. They have seen everything. Carbon has gone through a big cycle. There's been twists and turns. and they've managed to build a sustainable business out of this. Last year, so our fiscal year end is in December, we generated just under 4 million Canadian in revenues. So far, 2024 is tracking based on the growth we're seeing. We were up about 70% in Q2, 180% in Q3. So the business, as it stands, is growing. I joined the company as part of an investor group called NLX Capital. So my capital, the investor group we brought in, has put about $2 million into the company since November of 2023. I'm a partner at NLX Capital. The founder and CEO of NLX Capital, who is our executive chairman, Navdeep Dhaliwal, he's probably most well known in Canada for founding the Supreme Cannabis Company, which he took from 10 million market cap to 1 billion. Our current market cap is about 10 million, if anybody would like to check. My background, I have 20 years of corporate finance, capital markets experience. A lot of that was at BMO Capital Markets, where I was managing director for equities. I left BMO in 2019 to build high growth companies all over the world in the cannabis sector. That's how Nav and I got acquainted. And I see a lot of parallels between the growth and the fragmentation and regulations in cannabis as they do in carbon. And so a lot of translational skills there. We brought on a stellar board, Tara Diol, formerly of Kiewit, building $3 billion in infrastructure projects, and Christopher Morris, who's with RCM Capital. What we've accomplished to date, I think, is very amazing for a company of our size. Our work has spanned 5 continents, and across 19 years, most of that is a publicly traded company that most people haven't heard of. We've delivered 10 million carbon credits to the market. We have protected forest across 16 million acres. And if you look at the life of project, carbon credit origination, that's 200 million credits. So big numbers. And I'm sure you recognize some of the logos on this page. A few Canadian leaders, TD, and then in the US, Dow, and then a lot of energy names on there as well. So these are partners that we are either helping to assess their carbon footprint, we're working with them on carbon project development, and that model is evolving. If we look at the actual market and the demand, I think this is really important. So I talked about how carbon credits are being purchased by organizations to offset their carbon footprint. 2023 represented a record year in retirements of carbon credits. So that means an organization buying a carbon credit from the market and retiring it, meaning they're offsetting their carbon liability. And this is driven largely by the UN Accord, that referred to as the Paris Agreement, where 195 countries signed on to this in 2015, to reach net zero emissions by 2050. So net zero carbon emissions, that's putting pressure on countries, it's putting pressures on organizations, and the companies that are leading in the Fortune 500, they are making these net zero commitments. And while you can do part of this by insetting, changing your supply chain practices and being more environmentally sensitive that way, there are hard to abate emissions which you need carbon credits are a part of, and they're a big part of the solution. In terms of what this means in demand, so estimates currently place the carbon market at about $1 trillion all in. That's today. If you look at this graph, I'll just give you the headline. McKinsey thinks that could grow anywhere between 15 to 100x inside based on the supply and demand demographics. And we're actually seeing that in our conversations with emitters. A lot of transactions take place off exchange. And so we're very excited about the opportunity. In terms of pricing, that can also grow quite significantly, anywhere between 10 to 20 times based on forecasts. So demand is increasing. But we're coming out of a tough situation. The carbon market has existed since the late 80s. Carbon credits are not new, but a lot of teething problems, just like any new market. And we've seen it all. These headlines, I'll translate them: fraud, double counting, a lot of bad actors in the space. And I think what that's done, it's helped to bring around third parties, regulations, NGOs, to really hone in on what matters, how to assess that a carbon project is real, how to make it transparent, and importantly, to make sure it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. Is it actually having additionality and impact on removing or mitigating carbon? And that's what's happening. Bodies like the United Nations are stepping in. You're seeing third parties like the ICVCM. And What's important is that that demand side is still there, and they're cognizant of this. If you're sitting in the boardroom at one of those big final emitters, you're very sensitive to what kind of carbon credits you're buying. And so they're very much a part of the conversation. They are determining what quality means in carbon credits. And because we sell carbon credits, we're seeing that the quality differential, if you have a high quality project, can represent a 200% price premium. We think about this as we develop our projects. So this is just a world map of projects that we've developed where we are keeping quality in mind. Lots of work in Canada. I'll talk about some of our past projects. The Global South, which includes Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, lots of opportunity there. And again, I'll talk about that. But just to look back at what Ostrom has done. Life of project, 200 million carbon credits, and at average pricing, that's about $2 billion of carbon. My job is to find a way to participate more in that $2 billion so that we create more shareholder value. Here's one of our past projects. This is, as a Canadian, I'm a Canadian living abroad. I'm actually based in London, in the United Kingdom. I think it's really stunning that this is the largest carbon project in Canada that Canadians have never heard of. It's in British Columbia. It spans 6.4 million hectares. It is the largest coastal rainforest in the world. And what Ostrom did as advisor to this project to help bring it about was to provide the management to create carbon credits, to prevent logging, to create sustainable forest management, and really achieve the goal of carbon credits to protect that natural capital. And so we market these carbon credits, and I really encourage you to look at the videos later. They're really, I don't know why they don't have millions of views, frankly, because this is a real story that I think Canadians should know about. But we're proud to be a part of that. And what's great is there's even been some recent BC legislation that if you have a business in British Columbia, you really need to be buying BC offsets. So we expect demand to increase precipitously for this particular project. In West Africa, we're in Ghana. Ghana is a leader in terms of this new age of carbon credits where we're seeing the transparency and regulations led by the UN. Without going into the jargon, this is referred to as Article 6, and that means carbon credits which are able to be bilaterally traded across sovereign nations in a way that they aren't double counted. So there's actually registries on either side. That didn't exist before. I know it sounds cutting edge, but it's there now. And so we are doing this across 100,000 hectares. If you actually do some research on this, you'll see that there's some large investors. The Singaporean Sovereign Wealth Fund has put anywhere between 20 to 30 million US into this, and the IRRs are attractive. So we're there as a consultant. If we look at our new strategy, which goes back to our mission, which is to develop high-quality carbon credits, we don't just want to be the advisor and the consultant. We want to be the owner of the project. And our two areas of core competency, forest carbon, I'm sure you could tell from some of the slides I just went through, is on the other side, we have a barbell strategy of climate-smart agriculture. And we are developing these projects as owner in tandem with those final emitters. So we want to take the risk out of the project development. We want to make sure we line up the quality and the price expectations with the buyer ahead of time, and ideally enter into long-term agreements. You're seeing these happen right now. Microsoft is signing 30-year offtake agreements in carbon projects. That's just a flavor of things to come. And this is our flagship project. This is what we're developing right now. So I just came back from Manila, where I spent time in the Philippines, and this project is our climate-smart rice cultivation project. It's referred to as UPRIS, which is the Upper Pamanga Irrigation System. What we are doing here is we are working with farmers on the ground to change the cycling of the water that goes into rice cultivation. And rice cultivation is a major activity in the Philippines. There's over 1 million farmers, and it's a staple crop. They don't export any of that rice. It's all for domestic consumption. But the water it's stagnant, it stays there in cultivation. It harbors microbes which generate methane. So that water in the rice paddies is a petri dish that creates that environment. By cycling the water, you can actually reduce the methane emissions quite a bit, anywhere between 40 to 50%. And methane is 30 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So what does this all mean? This means we can generate high-quality, impactful carbon credits across the life of this project, and there are still a lot of assumptions that are going into this, so just keep that in mind that the science and the testing is proving it out. But we could generate, at the midpoint, 1 million tons of carbon credits a year. We're the owner, so that means these are our credits that we're selling. Pricing in the market, again, you can go look at public price points, that's $10 to $20 a ton US. It's significant on our revenue line. Communities are at the heart of our project, so we're not just doing this on the environmental side. This is also about communities benefiting, they're getting education. We are educating farmers how to employ these practices, and it really, as a side result, they're learning how to manage their farms better. These are small hold farmers, 1 to 2 hectare plots. We're bringing them into farm schools, and they're learning new things. I mean, they're 50-year-old farmers on average, and so they think they know everything, but they're still best practices. And we also see biodiversity benefits as well because we're protecting that area. So a lot of things to be excited about. So I'll finish here on the highlights. Ostrom has been around for a long time, advising on these carbon projects. We are now moving into a new era where we are the owner, where we expect to create material shareholder value. We've done this globally. We have great relationships with the final emitters, which we're developing these projects in with Tandem. And we're now here to talk to investors, engage as we go on this journey. So I'll leave it there. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Question.
Hey, Tash, thanks for that. I had a quick question. Do you have any insights or thoughts about when stricter regulations around scope reporting will be coming into effect? Do you see that happening at different times in different organizations? And how is that going to impact? Oh, sorry. I don't know if people can hear me, if I need to re-ask the questions, but A, what's your take on the introduction of Scope 3 related regulation, and how will that impact the generation or project origination?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and actually, just so you have a tangential understanding, Scope 1, 2, 3 emissions refer to Scope 1 being the emissions that are generated by your business, like on a primary basis, so think of like your petrol usage, flights, and then as we go to Scope 3 and Scope 2 and Scope 3, that's more about supply chain oriented emissions. And so what's actually happening right now is that bodies like the SEC are forcing disclosure for many companies in the US related to just Scope 1 and 2, which in itself is a big potential driver of demand for carbon offsets. So Scope 3 is something that we're monitoring very carefully so that we expect that to follow. If you're going to do Scope 1 and 2 reporting, you're probably going to do Scope 3 as well. So that's happening now.
What time scale will you regulate? I mean, I hear in North America, I mean, stop a bit, but I understand that in the EU and the UK, in the EU and the UK, that it's more imminent, and I don't know if you have any insights on the timelines there.
I don't have exact insights, but I can say that the EU is the leader in carbon. It's the largest carbon market in the world with the emission trading scheme, so that's about $800 billion a year. So Scope 3 emissions are definitely in focus for the large final emitters that we speak to. But in terms of exact date, I mean, this will take time. Scope 3, it's a lot of modeling, a lot of tracing that goes into this.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.